Library of Heaven's Path. Chapter 25, Looking for Trouble. Shang Shi. Cao Xiang said respectfully. Cao Xiang Lishi, you were looking for me? Shang Ben looked over with a puzzled expression. They might be both teachers of the academy and they often bumped into one another, but their relationship was still stuck at the level of an acquaintance. Indeed. I have something which I would have to trouble Shang Shi with. Cao Xiang hesitated for a moment before speaking. As long as it is something I could help you with, I will try my best. Cao Xiang replied. As the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, there were quite a few teachers who came looking for him for favors every day and he had long gotten used to it. Is that so? Yesterday, I took much difficulty in admitting a student under my tutelage, but he was snatched away by another teacher through deception. Isn't Elder Shang in charge of the Education Bureau? I would like to ask, if it is possible to transfer the student back to me. Cao Xiang said. Lu Yang was the best student which he spent a lot of effort to recruit. Yet, he lost him to Zhang Xuan due to that bet. When he returned, he got angrier and angrier the more he thought about it. Eventually, he couldn't bear it anymore and came to look for Shang Ben today. Shang Ben's grandfather was Elder Shang Chen, the head of the Academy's Education Bureau. Allocating a student to another teacher would be quite a simple feat for him. Transfer back. Shang Ben frowned. If that student willingly came under the other person's tutelage, it would be difficult. You also know that students are much more troublesome nowadays. If they are dissatisfied with anything, they would report the incident to the royal court and the teacher union, then we will. He isn't willing. I can guarantee that. Cao Xiang hurriedly replied. Even if he isn't willing, if the other teacher is unwilling to let him go, it won't be easy as well. You know the school rules. Shang Ben waved his hand. Suddenly, he raised his head and asked, just now, you said, deception. May I know which teacher is the one who coaxed your student over? It is our academy's trash teacher Zhang Xuan. Speaking of that young man, Cao Xiang clenched his jaws and hatred could be plainly seen on his face. Zhang Xuan? Your student was coaxed over by him. Hearing that name once again, Shang Ben's rage burned once again. If it wasn't for this fellow, he would definitely be able to get a dinner date with his goddess. A fellow who was only fighter 3 Dan and scored a 0 for him teacher qualification examination would actually dare to disregard his authority. He was seeking for death. If it wasn't for the presence of the goddess yesterday such that it was inconvenient to resort to physical means, he would have definitely beat him until he was on the verge of dying. Yes. Since he is that kind of teacher, no humans would be willing to become his student. So, I would like to trouble Shang Shi to help me bring up this matter with Elder Shang and allocate my student back, Cao Xiang said carefully, afraid that the other party would refuse his request. There is no need to bring this up with Elder Shang, I will settle this matter for you now. Shang Ben waved his hand majestically. You're going to settle the matter for me? The other teachers might still require the help of my grandfather for the reallocation process, but since we're talking about the useless trash Zhang Xuan, why do we have to go through so much trouble? We just have to go to him straight and if he refuses, we will cripple him. Shang Ben gestured grandly. He might be at a loss in means to deal with other teachers, but towards the one who scored a 0 for the teacher qualification examination, it was simply too easy for him to make a stand to teach him a lesson. Disregarding his weak abilities, the crux of it was that no one in the academy would possibly come in his defense. The most important point of all was that he had intended to give Zhang Xuan a good thrashing to vent his frustration, but he had been vexed over the lack of a suitable justification for it. If he were to strike without a suitable justification, he would surely leave a bad impression with Shen Bairu if she were to find out. But now, he had duped away the student of another teacher and the person in question had come over seeking for his help. He could make use of this reason to lash out at him. He didn't expect that Shangbin would be so generous. Cao Xiang was taken aback. There is no need for this. Come with me. If you're afraid, I will do it for you. The corners of Shangbin's lip curled upwards as a glint of brutality flashed across his eyes. Then, I will be thanking Shang Shi in advance. Cao Xiang's eyes lit up excitedly as he nodded his head hurriedly. The two of them moved towards Zhang Xuan's classroom with widened strides. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the entrance of Zhang Xuan's classroom to see the mummy-like Yao Han and the young master of the Wang family. Wang Tao, what are you doing here instead of training over at grandfather's? Shangbin frowned. He might be the grandson of elder Shang Chen, but he was still a little off in terms of standing in comparison to Wang Tao. Shangbin Lishi. Wang Tao bowed. My younger sister was duped to attend lessons here. I intend to take her back. Shangbin? Yao Han was still considering whom he should gather intelligence on Shangbin from when he heard that the young man before him was Shangbin. He hurriedly lifted his head to take a good look at him. You mean Wang Yingxiaja? Shangbin's face darkened. Coldness radiated out of his eyes as he declared, that Zhang Xuan is really too daring. To dare to dupe even Wang Xiaja, he must be tired of living. Looks like if I don't teach him a lesson, it would be hard to appease the crowd. Indeed, Wang Tao nodded his head. Since Wang Yingxiaja was duped to come under his tutelage, why didn't you barge in to stop him, and chose to wait here instead? Harumphing, Shangbin looked over with a puzzled expression. That, Wang Tao dared not to admit that he was thrown out. Scratching his head, just when he was perplexed over how he should answer, Yao Han, who was beside him, said, Isn't there a rule in the academy that states that entry into a classroom is disallowed in the midst of a lesson? Thus, we could only wait outside for the lessons to end. This is. Only now did Shangbin notice the mummy-like Yao Han. This is the butler of city Lord Zhao of Biao City, Yao Han. Wang Tao hurriedly introduced him. So, it is Butler Yao. I have long heard of your name. Shangbin nodded his head and continued, there is such a rule in the academy that no one is allowed to barge into the classroom in the midst of a lesson. However, it doesn't matter in this case. You all can follow behind me to enter the classroom. Today, I will personally take care of the fellow who has no morals as a teacher and goes around conning others. All right? Hearing that he was going to make a move, Wang Tao's eyes lit up and followed closely behind him. Yao Han hesitated for a moment before following behind them. In the classroom. Hongtian 9 Dan formula. It might be the most basic cultivation technique of Hongtian Academy, but there are quite a few problems with it. For example, the 5 students sat in the classroom, listening attentively to Zhang Xuan's explanations. Despite it only being the first lecture, they were all incomparably shocked. It was as though they have consumed ginseng fruit and were getting drunk on his words. The few students present in the classroom, with the exception of Yuan Tao, have exceptional backgrounds. They might have never gone to an academy, but they had learned everything systematically. They have undergone lectures of many different teachers and even had the privilege of having 5 Dan and 6 Dan experts offering them pointers. However, they had never been to such a lesson in their entire life. The lecture gave them a feeling of enlightenment. They found themselves suddenly comprehending many things that they were perplexed in the past. The breath in their body seemed to be tempted to follow the methods which the teacher was describing to them, and a sensation that they would be able to break through any time now gushed through them. The lecture was simply too well said. Hearing Zhang Xuan's lessons, they realized that even the supposed high-level teachers paled greatly in comparison to him. This was especially so for Zhao Yat. As the daughter of a city lord, her father often deciphered cultivation techniques for her. Initially, she had always thought that her father was the best lecturer in the entire Tianqian kingdom. After all, her father's strength was clear for all to see. However, in comparison to Zhang Lishi, she felt like a frog in the well. It was laughable. There was totally no way to compare the both of them at all. Zhang Lishi's explanations were spot on. No matter how incredible the cultivation technique and battle technique was, he was able to immediately spot the flaws in it, causing one to be shocked and go into deep thoughts, unable to calm the agitation in them for a long period of time. Often, a single deciphered sentence of Zhang Lishi would send them into thinking for half a day. After they finally comprehended it after much difficulty, they would realize that he had already been talking for a long period of time and that they had missed many of the knowledge which he had imparted then. Zhang Lishi's standards are way too high. At this moment, the 5 students finally understood how deep the foundations of battle techniques and how wide the tree of knowledge was within this young man who wasn't much older than them. Previously, I laughably thought that Zhang Lishi had simply lucked out to make my strength soar instantaneously. Only now do I realize that, given his wisdom, it is a small feat for him to accomplish such greatness. There are more than 100 methods for him to make my strength increase by a fold. The previously arrogant Liu Yang couldn't help but tremble on the spot, in comparison to him, Cao Xiang Lishi. Sigh, I better not compare the two of them. They are at totally different heights, there is no way to compare the two of them. It is like they both exist in different worlds. It is fortunate that they made that bet, otherwise, how could I possibly meet such a great teacher? The 5 students were each listening attentively to the lecture in agitation, afraid that they would miss some important knowledge. The door to the classroom was pushed open and a few men walked in with large strides.